You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 408, the Midnight Horizon review discussion episode. That's not a question. This is going to be we've both been looking forward to this episode for a very long time, ever since we got our hands on the book, for a lot of amazing reasons. It's just a standout title. It's some darn good writing, and it's got some character development in it that was just awesome. I mean, I know that's such a cheap and overused word, but really I don't know how else to explain how incredible the experience was to actually read this book and finally get a chance to talk about it and just kind of how it ties into everything. So I can go on about this all night long, but I'm not going to do it by myself. I'm going to do it along with Jonesy, who's joined us tonight. Jonesy, I say that like it's always a surprise, right?
I know,
but Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm actually glad to see you doing okay-ish.
I'm already sweating, so that's
yeah. For those that don't know, Albert is a true champion tonight, playing injured, basically, not feeling too hot. So, but he is
got the stomach flu and sweats and everything else going on. But
the
show must go on.
He's here. Yeah, that's right. He's here for y'all, and he would not miss it for the world. Well, that's not true either.
That wouldn't go that far, but yeah, I'm here.
But Albert, if you had to describe this book in a word, what would you use?
Wizard.
You know what else is wizard, Albert?
What?
That we were invited back to this to the podcast stage at Star Wars Celebration.
Hey, breaking news. Yes, very humbled, very grateful, thankful. I'm excited, even though I don't feel it. I don't feel 100%. This was like huge lift for me spiritually. But yeah, I mean, congratulations to you, my friend. Good, it's through our work and support and everything else that this happened, and we couldn't be more happy to go there. And not only that, but we're kicking and screaming. We are dragging along two of our good friends, Becca and Mark, over from Tarkin's Top Shelf. So if you haven't seen the announcement officially, I think Jonesy posted some stuff on social media earlier today. Can't tell you what it really said. Didn't really look at most of it, but
it definitely said wizard.
It said wizard. Yeah, no, for sure.
We're really excited. Awesome. Yeah, we're really excited, and partnering up with Tarkin's Top Shelf, we've been doing some things with them lately, and it's just been a blast. They're a book podcast, so it's going to be all about I think we're calling it Fallen Stars, the Jedi of the High Republic, and it's going to be a look at really what's going on with the Jedi and that that shroud of darkness that kind of seems to be wrapping itself around some of the Jedi and what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. So I think it's a good kind of introspective look and getting a bunch of different perspectives on it from really everything we all look at, which is all a little bit different. And while they're focused on the books and now starting to get into comics, you and I have a ton of context from comics and from the books as well. So this is something that's going to be a lot of fun to do at Celebration.
Yeah, and I haven't. There's been only a few. Shout out to Try to the Force, What's Good, Star Wars Explained,
Sky Talkers,
and Talking Bay 94.
Yeah.
They've all been announced as well. I haven't seen any other ones. I've seen some people post the "Hey, you didn't get in" letters, and some pretty big shows. They're kind of shocking, but I mean, there's so many submissions every year.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably hundreds, because there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of Star Wars podcasts. So I don't understand the release of them. I thought today we would see the next. I was thinking, we did 25. There were 25 podcasts in 2019, and I thought, well, maybe they're releasing batches of 5. That's how many were released on Monday. I didn't see the email till Monday night, but batches of 5, and then that way, everybody wouldn't be posting all at once. They could kind of spread it out over the course of the week. But honestly, I've not seen any other shows announce that they've made it. I saw Pink Milk mentioned that they were going to be there, but I didn't see anything officially posted by them. So
yeah, and make no mistakes. Even though a lot of shows might, there's a billion Star Wars podcasts. So how they select this stuff, we don't really know what that criteria actually looks like. No, it's not money because we're sure
kidding.
Not paying them. We don't have any money. But I mean, there's so many that we don't have any idea what the actual criteria are, but a lot of these folks are still going to be there. There's going to be a podcast meetup that everybody is invited to, both podcasters and listeners. And I think Coffee with Kenobi is going to be doing that one. I think there's another one, like a Mosher one or something I was being told about. So whatever that's about, I didn't recognize the shows, but that sounds like a lot of fun with maybe some rec punk.
There you go. We can only hope.
I think they actually said like punk music, so we're just going to call it rec punk.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think kudos to you though, and I think maybe Becca worked a little bit too, of coming up with the idea and really selling it in the application. I mean, those are things that go a long way of investing the time and the energy into doing it. And so, I mean, great job to you. I mean, you put a lot of time and effort in that stuff and coming up with a really good synopsis about what they're looking for, and hopefully something that they think will be interesting for us to share with other folks.
No, thank you. I'm excited. I mean, and to be clear, we are going to look at the Jedi, and I think we were going to talk about this a little bit later, maybe next week, but we can talk about it now. It's really going to be, we're going to be looking at the Jedi, but through the lens of what went wrong kind of thing, right? So it's called Fallen Stars, and kind of taking a deep dive into, now here's the thing. The challenge is like, which Jedi do we want to single out, right? Which of them had made such mistakes or, had too much blind faith or too much hubris or, whatever you want to call it, that kind of led them to where we see them in the Phantom Menace. Now, some of this also we're going in blind because we don't know what Phase 3 is going to be like, and knowing that that's going to allegedly take place after Phase 2 into the future. But again, we're going to make some assumptions. But yeah, I think the trickiest part is going to be just trying to figure out which Jedi do we want to discuss and what examples do we want to provide, and how do we cram that into like a 45-minute show, because that's all we get on stage, really.
Yeah, they give you an hour, but it's really 45 minutes whenever you cut everything off the front and the end of setup, and all the things that will go wrong usually do.
Right.
So yeah, we won't have Mike with us this time. Mike's in the chat here, but Mike really was a huge, for those that may be newer to the show, Mike was our fearless leader over at EGM and creator of Cantina Cast, of course. And Mike went with us last time and ran the soundboard to record us and make sure we sounded good and churn out the edits and stuff like that. So it's going to be a big miss without Mike this year. So we are going to miss you, Mike.
Hey, look, he looks good. Look at him there with that full beard. And
very stoked. Got a pipe.
Yeah, a pipe.
Yeah, and if you don't know, Mike Rondo, man, he's got a really cool kind of pipe, and I can't say what it really is, but what's the shed of solitude, I think is what he calls it. We call it something else, but anyway, he's got a cool little YouTube channel over there, so you might check that out.
Yeah.
So we don't know the details yet. We don't know what day. We don't know what time. No. Knowing Repop, it might all happen about a week before we go. So we'll see. But this was a pleasant surprise. Make no mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're excited. So we'll continue to talk about this more as we get closer. Of course, I do plan on, I have a whole stack of stuff to give away. So if for no other reason, if you want to just come out and get some free stuff, feel free to swing by the show when we do it. I've got books and stickers and magnets and all kinds of other garbage that I've been collecting over the last 2-3 years in anticipation.
It's the best kind of garbage.
But the best kind of garbage. This is freebie stuff.
Garbage a Jawa would collect and sell to Pelimoto. Yeah.
Well, and I think it was on the Patreon show, or maybe it was on this show last week, I showed all of the Old Republic
huge stack of
stuff that I've got that I bought for like $20 on a quick sale kind of thing. So anyways, we've got plenty of stuff to hand out. And then we will be planning other kind of social events, either, while we're at Celebration or after hours or something. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a Kenobi watch. There's all kinds of stuff that we're going to do. So
your adoring fans want you to sign some stuff.
Signs my garbage. That's silly. I'll sign whatever garbage you have. That's fine.
She wants to sign your garbage.
One man's garbage is another man's garbage.
Right. So another piece of quick news. Finally, Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga has made its way into the good people's hands, and this was a long time coming for a lot of people. It felt like it was never going to get here, and there is so much excitement about this Lego game. Of course, the Lego games in general are really cool, and so I think this is the one to really truly complete everything that they've done before, and some of the new things. And supposedly right now, or what we're hearing right now is the reviews are absolutely awesome. That people are just having a blast with it. So sounds like it was well worth the wait.
There's already been one update. I bought it earlier today. I played the first, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of it and then gave up. But it looks awesome. And the missions look different than if you've ever played the complete trilogy, which I think a lot of us did. It's great. But yeah, there's already been one update. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Even just the screen after the intro, and you've got all the characters assembled there, and they're all kind of posing for like a picture. If you just sit there and let it watch, it is the funniest thing because they've all been animated to do different things over time.
Right.
And so like one bumps the other person and then they try to get back and, look at the camera straight, and somebody falls off, and somebody like Vader or R2 almost bumps Vader off, and Vader gives him a nasty look. And there's just these little like idle kind of animations that happen while the screen's there. You can just sit there and watch it. It's pretty good stuff. So
always the little stuff that makes some of those things really, really special.
Yep. Great game. Can't wait to dig into that more.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of all the news I think we got.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I did want to make mention that last week we released a very, very special episode here on the Cantina Cast. This was a bonus episode entitled Student Loan Debt. So we took
critical that we did this, by the way.
We took the story that the story that was given to us in what was the comic that we were reading? My goodness.
Trail of Shadows.
And poor Uttersound here. And how much, where all of his anger was coming from, and where all this all kind of manifested was the fact that he had accumulated all his student debt going to med school to become a doctor, damn it. And we decided to put an episode together that kind of talked about all of the other instances in Star Wars where debt had really kind of played a factor into someone's life. And there was just too many examples, honestly, to really kind of go into. But of course, this was an April Fool's joke. So if you had a chance to listen
but it's something you want to stay around all the way to the end for.
To the very end.
It's worth it.
Don't turn it off.
But you have to listen to it for the full hour.
You don't. I know Jonesy did, but you don't have to do it.
I listened to the entire thing.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, that was a lot of fun to do. And I also we forgot. I was going to pull up this. Jonesy. Look at Jonesy with his abilities here. Just one last thing on the
with reusing backgrounds and stuff.
Shh. But yeah, he did crank out this little piece of artwork here that we're using to promote the celebration announcement. So thanks for putting that together on such a short notice, my friend.
Absolutely.
All right. You want to talk about this book?
Yeah, Midnight Horizon. Daniel Jose Older, DJO.
All right. Give me your first impressions, your initial thoughts.
Yeah, it might be the best High Republic book we've had. And at the very least, I think this is the best companion to the adult novels I think that we've had, period. And by that, I mean, like when you talk about something that leads into Fallen Star and plays at the same time as it, and has so many, like this story matters as it pertains to really the aftermath of Fallen Star. And when you look at it that way, it's really cool how important it is, and really how some of these characters are intertwining, especially if you read the comics. And again, we've said it before, this wave in general for High Republic has been more integrated than any other wave, by far. I mean, they're all so closely tied together. But really what makes this book special, I think, is that, man, the heart of all of these characters is just full on display. I mean, and every single character has a moment to shine in one way or another, whether it's Reath, Ram, Zeen, even Lula a little bit, and then we get new player Crash in there, and then the old timers too, Kantam Sy and Vice Cohmac also have moments. So I think it was really emotionally invested. So by the time you get to the end, you're like, man, this is awesome. And then what you actually get at the very end, you're like, holy crap, it's just awesome. It's just so much fun,
Mm-hmm. I would say too, like this was definitely agree with all that. I mean, it was a funny book beginning to end, which was a lot of fun. It was, in fact, I did a whole section when I was taking notes of things that I felt were like just funny moments, because I found myself laughing through this book more than I did many of the other books, honestly. The only other one that even came close was the one with Geode. So, and some of his antics and that sort of thing. But for the most part, it was balanced, right? I mean,
yeah, it really was.
Which was kind of a theme in this book in itself. But just the balance of, we had some really sorrow moments, we had some very deep moments, some very emotional moments. We had lighthearted moments, and then we had some that were just outright hysterical. Especially when Ram's trying to get dressed out in public and worried about giving everybody a show kind of thing. So yeah, I felt like it was a very character-driven book. I think, like you said, all of the characters just came to life in ways that I don't want to be too dramatic, but in ways that they had not come out before. And a part of that is just the natural development of the characters. I felt like, especially like Reath and Ram, by the end of this book, they've grown up so much. And really, in that last third of the book, and after I think it's chapter or scene 5 or act, what are they? He broke them up into
Parts.
section. Yeah, part 5, maybe that's what it was. That whole last part, I mean, they grew like 5 years and matured in a lot of different ways. Even if they didn't feel it, you could just sense it in how relentless and determined they were in battling off the Nihil.
I think that's a great point. This was very much a coming of age book, more so than I think any of the other ones we've had. And what I liked about it, though, is it wasn't just Ram and Reath. It was really about also showing us Kantam Sy's story and what it means to. It really answered a lot of questions for us about this idea of a walkabout, right? Because I think how they called it in the book, which is also very much, kind of like a declorous walkabout, or in Australia and those types of environments where you kind of go and find yourself spiritually, right? And you have to get away sometimes from, from what you think you need to do before you can really find, or at least maybe admit to yourself who your true self really is. And I think it was also very monumental and instrumental of how that affected Cohmac. And I can't wait to talk about Cohmac a little bit and kind of see where we land about this character, because his ending was so abrupt.
Yeah.
Of where that's going and what we might be able to expect from really a character I think that was really well developed in some of the other stories, and while not surprising, still a little bit surprising. And for the folks on Twitch, we do apologize about the spam. We're not able to filter that out from our feed, so sorry about that for the Twitch listeners or watchers.
Yeah. I'll block that person later. They'll just create another account though. So here's something else I had a question about, like the title itself. I mean, Midnight Horizon, right? It's the beginning of the midnight, beginning of the darkness, literally. Right. Sometimes these titles seem to take on other kinds of meanings. Did you find any other kind of meaning with this book at all?
Actually, I kind of looked at it the other way around, where the darkness, and when we had a certain character show up at the very end, it almost seemed like we were peeking over that edge to where maybe the dawn was just kind of on the other side and not too far away from us.
Yeah.
So you kind of look at it from both ends of that spectrum.
Sure.
But yeah, Midnight Horizon. I mean, you could apply it to Cohmac, I think, as well. I think in the same vein that you were referencing it, and yeah, I don't know. It was less so obvious than some of the other ones, I think, at least.
Fallen Star.
Yeah. Did you have any other connotations that went with it?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Okay. Next question, please. No, okay, so here, let's talk about the themes, though, because there were some important themes in this one. We talked about balance. That was certainly, we saw that a lot through the characters. They were going through this, I guess I wouldn't say the trials of trying to balance emotions, but maybe that's what it was. They were struggling with how to balance their emotions at times. And there were certainly, outside of the stuff that was happening with Starlight Beacon and things that were happening with the Nihil, I mean, there was, again, like you'd mentioned, there was the whole, the story with Kantam Sy, and him trying to balance his emotions and feelings. You had Zila and Lula.
Yeah, Zeen
and Lula. God,
there you go.
Zeen and Lula, and just them trying to balance their feelings and their emotions as well. The other one was the whole to love is to let go, right?
Right.
The theme of detachment, which kind of plays into the balance piece of it as well.
Right.
I think Ram was more focused on the balance of it. He was just feeling all this anger. Things were never going right. This is not at all what he would, he wanted to live his life out just tinkering with things. And yet here he is thrust in the middle of a battle and an ongoing war, if you will.
Right. And same with Reath, right? Yeah, I mean, Reath, his home used to be Coruscant, and then all of a sudden he equated a home to Starlight Beacon. And now he doesn't have his home was destroyed with Starlight Beacon.
Right.
And so you have this constant interchange. And I think one of the most powerful examples of it, well, I think there actually were several powerful examples. I thought Ram had a really good moment in there, but I also really, really liked Kantam Sy and Yoda, and how that worked, especially when you get Yoda's perspective. And so maybe to pull the curtain back on that one. So Kantam Sy ends up leaving the order, I guess temporarily. Again, this is kind of that walkabout
The
in order
walkabout
to
is what he called it. Yeah.
right, in order to pursue this relationship, right? And so they decided to go through these motions, and they thought they were in love, and then they thought they were joining the circus and traveling around and really enjoying life. But at some point, you reach that point where that tipping point. And so Kantam Sy decided to, it's most important for me, and I can't remember who their partner was, the name, but you get this tipping. So he decides they decide to go back to the Jedi Order. And one of the things that Yoda ends up saying to him, or to them, sorry, this is really getting my head in the right space here. But what Yoda had a really hard time saying, or what was really great that he said to them, was that while it was difficult for Kantam Sy to make that decision, it was really difficult for Yoda to also accept that decision and know that they would leave and that they might not come back.
Mm-hmm.
And that the master feels that too. The master isn't immune to emotion. It isn't immune to these understanding desires and understanding some of these things that younger folks especially, feel when they're coming of age. And so I really like that we got Yoda's perspective as to how he felt about it and about how sad he actually was, how difficult it was for him to let go. And I really liked that aspect that, Yoda, we've seen Yoda be very pensive and very, contemplative about things. But in that moment, you could tell that he really cared for Kantam Sy, and to the point where it really hurt to see him go, and, really unsure of what to happen. He had to trust in the Force kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, but I really liked how that played out. And I thought that was a really good, although very small for Yoda, I think a very important element for Yoda that we've perhaps not seen on that kind of level in all of Star Wars, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, there were, of course, when Yoda comes in, there's always good bits of knowledge that he imparts on folks.
He was pervasive really throughout this book, even if just in lessons learned in the past, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the way Older was like teasing up the fact that he was gone. I mean, there was like 2 or 3 times at least that he mentioned that Yoda was gone, and you kind of had this sense that he wasn't coming back. And then certainly he shows up as we talked about Gandalf the Gray or Gandalf the White at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of want to. There are a couple lines in here that I just want to quickly read, because that piece you're talking about, where he's talking to Kantam Sy about feelings, he says, "Very like the wind, our feelings are." Excuse me. He says, "The wind touches us, we experience it. It's real, but it passes. So too do our feelings. But sometimes there is a hurricane. The winds are so strong they lift us, carried away we can be. Everything we know and trust gone. Then easy it becomes to give into anger, aggression, and fear." And so so the analogy being that feelings are like the wind, that they come, we feel them, but we've got to let them go. We've got to let them they can't stay with us. Otherwise, things lead to the dark side, lead to fear.
Right.
And what he was really trying to say is the only way out is in. And by doing that, and so by meaning the only way out of, let me remove this real quick. Excuse me, I'll edit this out. But I
you can't remove Twitch, I don't think.
Yeah, I can. I just pulled them out.
Oh, cool.
So, he's hit your Glee Media. Hold on, I got to remove that one as well. Sorry, guys. Anybody that's with us live tonight. Okay, they're gone. So the meaning being the only way in to the Jedi, into the Force, is by letting them go. And this is the proverbial, if you love something, let it go. If it comes back, then it was meant to be. If it doesn't, then it never was meant to be, that kind of thing.
Right.
That's essentially what he was doing here. So yeah, great stuff from Yoda there. But I mean, these were good moments. And then later on, he has another great moment where he's talking about, when the big monster was giving birth. Like, we had a birth in this one, like an animal birthing. You remember this part? I wrote it down. I don't remember where it was now, but yeah, it was just in that there was a whole story. We'll come back to that in a little bit, because I do have that in here and I do want to talk about it. But
okay.
Before I go any further, the wizard was mentioned, I think 13 times in this novel. By the way,
knew you were going to count it.
Anybody that was keeping track, 13 times. It was just used a lot, but it wasn't used like overly used. It felt natural.
And it was funny too. So for those who maybe haven't read Midnight Horizon, Ram Jamaran coined the term wizard, and he is all about it, right? He's all about that. This means he's excited. This means it's awesome, and whatever else. And people just kind of look at him funny about it, but he uses it throughout the book, and it's just perfect every single time because it's exactly how we would use the word wizard, right? From what we learned from Kitster early on. So it was really cool that's one origin story I'm really cool with actually getting.
Me too.
Especially with a character like Rem, who's just so much fun.
Yes.
This kid's like the epitome of fun, and the way that he's written in pretty much every piece of material, but especially DJO, because DJO did the new the High Republic Adventures comics too. And he's just so much fun. He got so much life to him. He just really jumps off the page at you.
Yeah, so going on with the things that I guess our initial thoughts before getting to the characters themselves. Another one that I really liked was I felt like at times this was a good. I would call it a buddy cop drama, maybe. I don't know what you would call Reath and
Ram.
Reath and Ram at times, and then there was Zeen and Crash. Zeen and Crash later on. They were kind of running around together with pistols drawn. Doing stuff, so it was just good team ups. There was a lot of one-on-one team ups, but in that, just the dialogue between them was great to kind of hear. But then the other thing that really stood out was I really enjoyed seeing the perspectives of the older Jedi versus the younger Jedi. So like when Starlight Beacon was going down and the Nihil were out, I mean, like Kantam Sy and Cohmac, they had like full-on visions and could see what was happening. They could feel the emotions, and they didn't even want to talk about it. They were both spooked to death after they kind of shared the images. Where the kids, the younger ones, Ram and Reath. Sorry, I'm struggling here. Ram and Reath, they were very much just, they could feel something, but that was about it. They got just kind of whiffs of emotion, whiffs of things. There was a sense that something was wrong, but they really couldn't put their finger on it. And it just spoke to like how much in tune they were with the Force. But then there was also examples in here where the older Jedi they never hesitated whenever they needed to do something, right? They trusted the Force so much by this point in their lives that they made very quick decisions and didn't second guess, didn't just really trusted in the Force, relied on the Force, where the other ones, the younger ones throughout this book, were always kind of second guessing themselves and really doubting whether or not this is the right thing to do, letting their emotions get the better of them. And I love the fact that it spoke to that. You could see there was a clear distinction between how much all of the characters were able to kind of be in tune with the Force and not based on their experience with it.
Right. And when you look at Reath, as he started to progress through the book, actually towards the very end, Reath is just beaten to hell. I mean, this kid took a beating. And so he needs to escape at some point to get off the ship that's about to blow. And I think this is the point where he just trusts the instinct. He knows what he has to do. He needs to jump through this window, not really knowing what to expect when he goes out there, and that his friend needs to catch him with a ship. It was this kind of ridiculous thing, but he's like, he knows he has to get out of there. Ram's kind of telling him to get out, but he just has to take that leap of faith. And I think it was very much also that sense of trust between the characters. And we really saw that, like Ram and Reath really did. I mean, I think they even said it. I think Reath finally, or maybe it's Ram, I finally admitted to himself, like, this is my best friend. I mean, he is my best friend, and he's, and the way that their relationship works, you just feel it, right? And I think even Zeen says it a little bit later on, the Padawans in their clique, if you, even Lula aside, who she's, they've got a thing going on too, but she loves the Padawans. Like all of these that she's gone around, she has this attachment to him. But even she, as a Force sensitive but not a Jedi, is trying to learn these same lessons too. Of, okay, well, how do I let some of this go? Right? There's some things I'm not willing to let go, but what are the things I can, remove myself from? And really, it comes back to trusting other people to be able to do what you think they need to do, and again, kind of being okay if it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good segue. Last thing. Sorry. No, there's one other thing. One other thing that stood out for me. Chapter 65, which I called Return of the Jedi. And that's where Yoda finally shows up.
Yeah.
So that was a really great moment. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but I did enjoy finally getting it because we've been talking about it this whole time.
Overly dramatic entrance.
He'd been gone for almost how long? Almost a year, right? Since the very beginning. He
I
disappeared.
think that's about right.
And so, where has he been this whole time over the last course of the year? And everybody presumed that everybody thought he could be dead, but everybody thought also that, hey, if somebody like Yoda dies, we would sense it. And they had never sensed that presence that he had,
Right.
or the lack of presence there. So,
There's definitely a growing concern because, there was no check-in or anything.
Nothing. Yep.
And then he came back with and then he showed up with a mysterious figure that likes to sing a little lullaby.
Mm-hmm. A lullaby that we're all familiar with now.
Yeah.
Referencing the bonus episode on student debt.
That's right. For a full hour.
All right, let's talk about. I guess I'm going to call these the main characters because, in my opinion, they were. But let's talk about Ram Jamaram, and Reath Silas. So their relationship was great. Like in many regards, I had never really seen it this way. But they're both kind of similar in that they got along with the other Padawans, and yes, they were part of the family. But at the same time, they were both very much people that still like to be on their own. They were kind of,
well, they stuck out a bit.
Yeah. Right, for different reasons. You had a bookworm kind of Jedi, and you had one that was kind of a tinkerer. They weren't really into. I mean, they did the blaster stuff or the lightsaber stuff, and they weren't always the best at the Force, but they tried that kind of thing. So they had interesting perspective. But the fact that they were both on the outside, almost very introverted at times, they came together and realized that, hey, we can. And that's kind of what happens, right? You have these cliques of people, but then you have people that are like that. They kind of get together and they become a little clique, even though they're not very loud and boisterous, but I guess there were moments in here where they probably were, because they had to step out of their shell in a lot of different ways.
Right.
But I did love the fact that they did that, and they actually tried to do a Force bond at one point, really, kind of do what Torben Buck and Kantam Sy had done, right? Kantam Sy and Torben Buck had a very, very close relationship, and they saw that and were like, hey, let's kind of do that same thing. And I don't think it really worked out as well as they had wanted to. But I mean, they were trying, right? I mean, it was part of the charm was that these two kids had gotten together and really grew up a lot. Like, I loved everything about everything they did in here. There's a lot of examples here, but what are your thoughts, I guess, on their relationship?
Exactly. I mean, the way that they just interacted and the bond that they already had going into this book, but really just how much stronger it came, and the understanding they had between them. So even when you bring in a new character like Crash, it's not something that divides Ram and Reath. They really actually find a way to be, actually pull a little bit closer together.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just really cool. And again, they embrace their differences too, right? And I think that's the main part of it. Reath understands with Ram that, he likes tinkering. He likes kind of the geeky engineering type of things, right? He knows those things are getting excited, and he loves that. He loves that about him, right? He embraces that and knows that that's how he perceives the Force, right? And then again, the same idea like with Avar Kriss has, of what's the song, what's everyone's song. Reath really very much touches into that and taps into that says, no, I really get that this is how he does it. This is how he perceives the Force. This is how he needs to, get it out, and he should embrace that and not be afraid of that or be shy about it and really be more open about it. And I think this was a great story that let both of them explore those different avenues of their own self, but also have that support for one another that helps really say, this is, it's okay to be who you are, and bring what you bring to the table and trust the people around you that you're better as a complementary group than on your own.
Yeah, that example that you mentioned, where Ram kind of sees the Force as tinkering and tools and all that. There's a great example in there where Reath tries to break it down from him, right? Tries to break it down like, here's what you need to do with your emotions, and he calls like the anger and all the emotions that he feels are kind of like what do you call?
Tools.
Tools, yeah. And he said, there's you've got to use other tools in your toolbox, right? He uses this analogy to kind of to connect with them, but to explain that you've got to find those other tools to kind of negate those negative feelings, those negative tools, if you will. And that was, you've got all these other tools in your toolbox. You just got to keep finding the right one. And that's how you kind of find balance and bring balance into your life. And so for him, when that happened, it actually resonated with him. And it was able to kind of see how to deal with his emotions in a very different way than he had been prior to. And this wasn't coming from his master, who I haven't seen much about. Master Kunpar Valisola, I think is her name.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't. Yeah, but yeah, he's not learning from his master. He's learning from Reath Silas, which is kind of a cool thing.
I really like that. I mean, because you very much, there's a tool for everything. And you just have to know once you figure out what tool that is, then you're good.
Yeah.
And I think it was absolutely the best thing for Ram. And again, it just builds more on that trust too, that, he can trust Reath, that Reath actually gets him. And I think this is also a great indication of where Reath is at in his journey to Jedi knighthood. And Reath is elevated at the very end of this book, but I think these are those moments. Oh, well, we already talked about Yoda, so.
I'm kidding.
But I think this is these are big moments, right? Because one of the things about, graduating to another level is not only this ability of self-awareness, right? Which I think Reath definitely goes through a discovery of.
Yeah.
But it's also, how do you bring the best out of other people? Especially as you become a more senior leader, right? You become less about the doing aspect of things, and you become more about, how do I support that person and how do I bring out the best in them so they can achieve what they need to achieve and be what they're capable of doing and who they're capable of being. And so I think this was a really great moment for Reath to really tap into that and to show Ram, what it really means for all of these things, or what it means to be a up and coming Jedi, I think, in many ways.
I did also enjoy the aspect that Ram, like, we think of the Jedi during this era sometimes, maybe not anymore. I think going into this, I think we painted them with, these golden brushes, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And really kind of held them up to the light, again, no pun intended. But,
right.
With Ram, he's like burnt out. Like, he doesn't understand, like the very beginning of the book, he's struggling with his feelings. He doesn't feel fear or sadness. There's just something that's nagging at him, and he can't really put his finger on it. But to some extent, they're kind of alluding to the fact that this is too much for him. This is not what he asked for. He's getting burnt out on all the hustle and bustle and constant moving. And Reath is feeling a lot of this the same way. But then tying that back to Kantam Sy and where Kantam Sy was, right? He got to that point too, where he was burnt out and like, I need something different. I'm not saying that Ram's path could have taken Kantam Sy's path and he would run off to join a circus like Kantam Sy did, but certainly this has got to be something that all the Jedi go through, and more now with these Jedi than ever before, because in this book especially, they make mention of when the last time they really were at war. And of course, there was a couple mentions about a century ago, 150 years ago. Okay, your radar should be going off because that's the exact same timeline that we're going to hit here in phase 2. But for the most part, these Jedi have lived a very, charmed life. They've got skirmishes and all that, but at the same time, and we've talked about this before on the show, they just haven't, up until the Nihil, they really haven't been doing anything. And what was this, using their lightsabers more for art and exhibitions and, right, it's more ceremonial, that kind of thing. But here they are being thrust in the middle of this war. But definitely some parallels there between what Ram and Reath are feeling and what Kantam Sy was feeling many years ago.
Right.
All right. So a couple other things here that stood out for me with Ram. I felt like he finally lived up to his name with the Eviscerator. So at the very end, by the end of the book, he jumps into what I think we're going to see more of these ships, I think, when we hit phase 2.
Yeah.
I got a question about this. So there's these ships called the Eviscerators, and the way I kind of envisioned it, and they do a pretty good job, but they've got like basically a drill on the front. These things are in the High Republic, or the Old Republic, by the way.
Right.
In SWTOR, you see them a lot. But they have a drill on the front, and they were used to literally ram into other ships and then board those ships. They would bore holes into the hull, and then they could board those ships. And so there's a moment here where Ram, I think, uses it once to do that, and then he crashes into another, I think it was a long beam as well, living up to his name as Ram. But one thing about the ship, though, while we're on this topic, he was feeling like there was something alive in the ship. Yeah. Like he was connecting in some way with the Force. And we think, and as far as I remember, these were used by the Jedi long ago at some point, right? So, did you take that literally, or was this some kind of like the Jedi crew, the Jedi starfighters that we see in the prequel trilogy? We knew that they would put that little band on there and they could connect to the system, and so that they could control it with the Force, and it allowed them to do that. There was something special about them. But did you take this as a kind of a sign that this was maybe some of that precursor technology in play here?
Maybe so. And I think the part that really led it on was when Ram approaches the ship and the creator's right there. He's taking it all in, and he's like, man, the engineering of it and how they did this. And he's like, man, how would they? And then he like has this pause. He goes, the Force.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of left off there, right? It didn't really give us a whole lot more, which I was right with you. I was like, oh man, well, hold on, wait, back up. Like, let's explore this. Like, what do you mean the Force? Because to be honest with you, the mental image I had when this was being described was actually the obelisk from New Jedi or whatever was after New Jedi Order. Right. The black ship that did, it was basically alive. And so that's what kept coming to mind.
About that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't quite get the shape really quite squared away in my head. But when he said the Force, but I don't know if that was crafting it or if that was something else. But yeah, it was definitely intended for a Jedi to use. And I guess for a little bit of context, the ship is now outlawed and has been outlawed for a while. So this is more of a memento, and they weren't even sure it really worked.
Right.
But actually, one of the interesting things about all this, so the guy who builds all of these at the shipyard, his name is Shug Drabor, and he's an Anzellan. And you know what Anzellans are? You know who's another Anzellan?
No.
Babu Frick. So the same.
Okay. So
there's so many little Easter eggs in this book too. By the way, I wrote a bunch of them down.
Yeah. No. So that makes sense because I pictured him in this small-looking thing talking because they talked about that, and at one point I was like, oh, he must be like him, and I never went back to look it up because I could not remember what Babu Frick looked like. But I'm glad you brought that up because I knew he was small because he was interacting with the Bombracks and they were kind of all at that same eye level. The Bombracks, yeah.
Your friends rats.
Yeah, the rats of Star Wars, the talking rats of Star Wars. Yeah, Shug Drabor. I think I saw that and I was like, Shug Knight. That's all I could think of.
That's what I kept saying too.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's some reference there or not, but yeah, there was for Ram also there was good moments where he was there was a theme in here. I don't know if it's a theme, but that's probably not the right word. But he was trying to be funny throughout this novel.
Oh, this is great.
He started off really small, tried a couple jokes, got a couple laughs from people, and realized like, hey, I'm kind of good at this thing, right? And he really wasn't. He really tried, but that was the cute part of it was he constantly continued to try to do it. Now, by the end, I think his jokes were getting better, but, more development for him. This is not something that he normally would have done.
Well, he finally landed one at the end.
Yeah, he did land one.
Yeah, he finally got one. All the parts kind of fit. His punchlines were always lacking.
They were.
They were pretty literal jokes.
Yeah. So that was good that he was kind of going through all of that. There was a line in there where Cohmac said, "You are a very rare and special individual," and it says that he said that without a hint of condescension. But I don't know. I laughed when he definitely said that. I got a question for you, though. So at the very end, like you mentioned, or like you spoiled, but Reath gets knighted, and I was not expecting him to get knighted, although it makes sense, especially. We'll talk about him. Like he really stepped up at the very end of this book in many different ways. But I felt like Ram was right there with him. Why do you think Ram was not? Was it because Reath's master was there and Ram's was not? But it feels like they kind of did equal parts. In my opinion, they were both equally important and saved the day many times, literally.
Yeah, I agree with that in many ways. But I think it was more the leadership that Reath really put forward. And I think also you look at the context, right, of what they were talking about, what are the things you don't know? And Reath started to have more of this, maybe not existential, but just a very broad view of questioning and understanding that he doesn't know so much. Now that frustrates him, but of course Yoda reassures him that no, the path of being a Jedi isn't having all the answers. Or I think Kantam Sy maybe said this, it's about knowing which questions to ask. Mm-hmm. And this is something that, again, you still grow once you become a knight. You're not done, right?
Right.
But I think it was those types of things where Reath was clearly, a step ahead of Ram, if not two. I think in just their developmental as a Jedi of what they're able to, maybe do and pull out of others, right? It's a bit more well-rounded. And so while Ram certainly made a huge leap, I think, throughout the story, I think Reath really took that next firm step into, you could consider him in a short amount of time that he would be able to teach someone else and start to learn this, but also he really needs to take that next step into knighthood in order to truly push himself even further. And there's only so many things, and I think Cohmac said this, there's only so many things that he could teach him, And really, Reath became his biggest teacher, his best teacher, which of course is something that we've seen in Star Wars from Last Jedi to whatever, right? Of
Yeah.
we are who they grow beyond, and or something to that effect. But anyway, the legacy of the teachers you have to learn from them too, and I think that was a great moment for Cohmac, and that goes all the way back to Into the Dark, for that book. But no, I think that was the reason why, though. I think it was just I think clearly Reath was ready. Where I think Ram, while he took a big step, he still has some figuring things out and get that self-confidence, and also that being able to look a bit more outward, where Ram's still looking a bit inward, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense. He had some pretty strong moments by the end of the book. I mean, he was solid throughout the novel.
Yeah.
They were almost one and the same, him and Ram, in terms of where they were and what they were trying to do and all that. But by the very end, especially when, I mean, he became a fighter. There was a moment in there where I think they called him bookage and badass, I think is the word that was used, those two words. But there was a moment there in one of the later chapters when he's fighting off Nihil that he was just relentless. Both him and Ram, honestly, I keep saying that, but they moved away. They moved more into the Cohmac Vitus mentality, which we'll talk about here in just one second, of like, enough's enough, right? This whole kind of, let's not hurt, let's not kill unless we have to, and all that. Cohmac calls that a folly, and that's why they've been on their heels for the greater part of the last year, because they're still clinging to these, preserve life at all times, and the Nihil are just not a normal kind of threat. And by the end of the book, they don't care at all. And the minute they pause, the minute they, double, second guess, triple guess whether or not it's okay to pull out their lightsaber, okay to take a shot or shoot somebody who's unarmed, is the minute they could die, right? It became very real to Cohmac, and he had enough about midway through this book. But it very much felt like, although they never really spoke to him about this, because he was talking to Kantam Sy when he made that comment, it felt like both Ram and Reath kind of fell in line with this. They were not pulling punches at all. I mean, they were relentlessly killing Nihil, severing limbs, smashing them, exploding them. I think who was it that rolled that thermal detonator at a group of them at one point? I think it was Reath. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were just slaughtering the Nihil like animals. Sorry. But episode 3 reference there.
Pace yourself.
Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna blow my energy here. But yeah, no, it was just a very it was an interesting development for them to go from where they were to where they were at the very end, but especially Reath. He had so many great moments in there where he was just constantly fighting for his life and was relentless and did not want to give up, and was using the Force like I had never seen him before. I mean, he was like cutting people down, throwing people, using the Force to push them away, jumping out of explosions. I mean, just, this is the bookworm that we all knew, right, from all of the first 2 waves. And it's good to see that he grew up that much. It's sad in a way that he had to become this. And I really wonder now too, like, if we just talk about maybe what's coming next for him. I mean, he has his master, he gets knighted. His master hands him his lightsaber and says, "I'm done. This now belongs to you," and literally walks off into the swamp. Ran off into the swamp. Yeah. Pulled a black chrysanthemum there. But yeah, I mean, like, for Reath, and the other thing about Reath too is, and you mentioned it earlier, I want to just kind of circle back on it, is he's never really had like I would say a steady home. Probably not a fair statement, but he had just gotten really comfortable on Coruscant, the Jedi Temple. Then he got moved to Starlight Beacon. Okay, that was a change. Now that's blown up. The thought of the Nihil being present in the core worlds now is kind of a real thing. It's plausible. So, and then he's got, Yoda saying, "Hey, we've got to retreat." He called it a recall, is what the official term was. But he's now masterless, and now, of course, he's a Jedi Knight, so he doesn't necessarily have to have a master. But I mean, he's got to be reeling and got to be going through a lot, especially with somebody like Ram having gone through it all as well. I think Ram is going to be leaning on him quite a bit too. But it's a lot for him to take on, a lot for all of these guys to take on. I think that was the point of the very end, Older was really trying to kind of lay that pretty heavy and thick that things are very, very different now going into this next chapter.
Yeah, and I think to rewind a touch on when they were getting more assertive with their Jedi skills and ripping through, they weren't doing
negotiations.
Yeah, right. They weren't doing it out of anger or anything like that, though.
Right. I mean, no, that's a good point.
I think the context. I mean, the Nihil were overwhelming them. Mm-hmm. This was a losing fight. They only had I'll say a handful, but a small group of Corellians there to help defend. You know, Crash and her crew were doing what they could, and they were not winning this fight. They were putting up, man, the most legendary of stands. It was like the Alamo, but it just wasn't. It was just a losing fight, and they weren't able to do it. So they were getting a bit desperate. But again, they weren't really cutting corners or going against their morals. They were just like, this is so important. We cannot lose this, because they knew what was going to happen. These ships were going to go to Starlight, and they were going to finish off what else was left, or who else was left. Mm-hmm. You know, so everything depended on this. They had to do everything they could, and to the point where they were like, you know what? If we can't do this, we're going to blow everything up. Yep. So they can't get out. They will blow every single ship up, and just so they don't get it. And they had to do it. They had to do it a couple of times, right? I think they blew up 2 of the long beams. Yep, if I recall right. So I mean, it was very much a last stand type of thing, and they just kept retreating to the point. And like you said, man, they were just all taking a beating, in Reath in particular, to where you just don't know how this kid was standing.
Yeah, he'd been shot in both arms. He'd been shot in the leg.
Yeah.
There were other things going on. It got so bad that at one point there was, when Ram picked him up and threw him in that little chamber to rest, and like, you're going to rest here, and he passed out literally because he'd been fighting just, wave after wave of Nihil, literally by himself there for a good period of time. Okay, so let's see. Anything else on Reath, Silas? It's kind of hard not to talk about Reath without talking about Ram.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll jump back and forth and talk within some context there. But yeah.
Yeah. There was the whole putting us first thing. That was kind of a theme as well. I mean, what that meant to him. But yeah, I mean, ultimately he was not sure of his path and what the ultimate goal was. And I think he may. I don't know. That's a good question. Does he know now? Did he solve that? But we'll come back to that maybe a little bit later. There was one cool. I want to talk just quickly about there's really nothing deep in this, but there was a good moment there that I enjoyed when they were both doing the meditation thing, and I think who was it? I think Reath took Ram and tried to levitate him. And he said, no, Ram levitated Reath first, right? And so Reath is now levitating. They're going to go into this meditation type thing. And so now it's Reath's turn, and he pulls a practical joke on Ram. So he starts levitating. Then he turns him on his head, and then I think he sent him down crashing or whatever. And then the next thing he sees when he opens his left eye or something is Ram charging at him with a pillow. And so they get into this pillow fight. And I did enjoy that only because throughout this book, and I think it was Cohmac and Kantam Sy later on, where they're like, hey, let the kids be kids. And there were moments where these guys were able to just be kids, even though they were in the midst of all of this stuff that's going on, the crazy stuff that's going on. Certainly not at the end, but leading up into that, they just got to be kids. And I think that was really kind of the fun part for me is watching them just interact with each other and pull pranks like that and take cheap shots and, all of Ram's jokes. And I mean, honestly, you can go on and on, but these two are the big standout characters for me. Maybe apart from Kantam Sy, who was kind of a special kind of person.
It's a bit of a contrast from what we had with Avar Kriss with Keeve Trennis, right? Mm-hmm. Now Keeve is much older and kind of already at knighthood, so the expectation and that stress of everything, that loss of innocence, isn't really something that Avar is super concerned with. But Kantam Sy and Cohmac have some ability to reflect on that, and we've seen this come up a few times, but I think no more or no more clearly than in this one right here in this book. And I really like that they called that out though. And we're like, you know what, let them blow off some steam. We saw a lot of this in High Republic Adventures. Yep. We saw it a little bit referenced in even Trail of Shadows when Ram, hi pretty lady. And
during the Great Race.
They're just blowing off steam, and letting kids be kids. I think it's an important thing, especially for, I think, someone like Ram and maybe for Reath too, even though he's on this cusp. He's still young enough to where he still needs to remember kind of where he's at in life. I think this is similar with like Vernestra Rowe, where you're just thrust with all these responsibilities and all of this chaos, and you're somehow supposed to make sense of it when you don't really feel like you've been prepared for this type of, constant combat, the brutality of it all, and what's wrong with blowing off a little steam from time to time.
Yep.
But again, I think I like to spoke to their friendship too, right? And it was just so cool to see two people get along. And I always like it when there's male relationships that develop, especially younger kids, where you can actually see healthy male relationships. And I think those are so important to be able to see not only friendship but respect and challenging one another and really helping each other, move forward and grow.
Yeah,
it's not so hard counters in the chat. Him and I talk a lot about this stuff.
Yeah,
and it's just something that we need more of, I think, these days, for young men in particular.
No, that's a very good point, and there's lots of examples in this book of that. So,
yeah.
Okay, so before we get into Cohmac and Kantam and some of the other Jedi, let's come back to, I guess, Crash. I want to talk about Crash because she's a new character that was introduced here. She kind of runs what was it?
It's like a security detail. Yeah, protection agency, bodyguards. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's kind of running that. It was inherited by her mom. And she's got a whole cast of characters, honestly, that are actually pretty good too. Like I thought some of them really stood out, especially was it Tamo or Tomo?
Yeah, towards the end. Yeah, towards the end, they really shine.
They really did. They all kind of came together. The guy that was flying, I can't remember his name now too, was kind of important.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was. We talked a little bit about detachment. And going back to the examples of Yoda and Kantam, right? Releasing Kantam and allowing him to leave. You had the same example with Lula and Zeen, where Lula was like, hey, or was it Lula? Yeah, I think it was Lula that said, look, when I come back, I forget now which one it was. One of them was going to come back after the war and be like, I'm done with this. I don't want any more of this relationship. I'm going to detach myself. You had Kantam and what was his name? Altar?
Something like that. I didn't write that one down.
I got it somewhere here. But Kantam's Atar. So Kantam and Atar were of the same. They had their moment where one had to leave and one just left, and that's what they had to do. You had Cohmac and Reath at the very end, right? Where we don't know if Reath really let him go, but Cohmac said, "I'm leaving, and you're on your own." But then there was a moment here with Crash and her agency. I know that sounds kind of on the surface, but that really was at the very end, right? If it is about detachment, she was trying to figure out what was next for her after a series of setbacks. Really, a lot of things went wrong with her bodyguard details, but she had a group of these core group of people that worked for her that she considered workers or agents, but never really considered them family. And that's where she went wrong, is never really considered them family. But she had to let go of that agency, and she decided to kind of part ways with it. And so now by the end of the book, now she's this ex bodyguard owner kind of person. And
I thought she was still kind of doing, like, she was kind of building it up better than ever.
No, I didn't take that away, but I mean that may be it. But I know she was at one point, she was calling herself like, "Hey, I don't do that anymore," and it kind of gave her some freedom, right? She was able to do things that she hadn't felt like she had been able to do because she had she had the title and she was a business owner and she had clients, and there was all kinds of other things that were kind of tying her back.
Yeah, and early on, I mean, she lost one of her people, and she takes it personally. She takes it.
It was like her best friend, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Pre-Bolt. Yeah, and so, and for those counting at home, so Pre-Bolt's a Grindelid, who
how do you befriend a Grindelid? That's like sounds disgusting.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah,
it's the mother, or what was her name in Rogue One, or sorry, Rogue One.
Yeah. So Pre-Bolt is presumably related to Rebolt, who is part of Lady Proxima's family.
Yeah,
Lady Proxima actually makes an appearance, and that, of course, she was in Solo, all those years later. So clearly, these things live forever.
And she was young though too. She was a younger one.
She was she was quite young still, but she was still instrumental, or very vocal and respected, I think, even at a younger age.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, for Crash, it very much spoke to, who, the how she felt about her crew. They really were her family, but she always tried to keep a bit at arm's length with some of it. And when you lose one of them, it really shakes you to the core. But the amount of trust you have to have in these folks, and it's a well-oiled machine, and they don't really like outsiders, of course, but But by the end of the day, she really understands that, these are her family. Svino, the celebrity, friend, kind of off and on, girlfriend, I guess. And again, it's the same type of thing, right? Of being able to trust and let someone in and be vulnerable. And Crash always wants to keep everything so businesslike because she's just afraid to really expose herself and say, well, this is me. I value our relationship. And then you get hurt. And Prebolt's death really, kind of set her back quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot. And actually, Ram and Reath are the ones who probably pulled her back off that ledge because she just tried to manipulate them. But, they're just so lovable. You can't help it. but just got to, jump on board with them.
Yep. So Lauren chimes in with, that's what sold me on this book. DJO made me care about a Grindelid.
Lauren, you have some of the most interesting things that you really deeply enjoy.
And that's right. It is true because so they're Prebolt. I don't know how it was pronounced in the audiobook, but this Grindelid, right? He talks normal. I never got a sense that he talked any differently. He speaks normal common, and he was she even talked about how good of a bodyguard he was and how he was always thinking, and if he was here he could help me. But yeah, you really did care about him. Although I kept thinking throughout the book that he was going to pop back up, even though I know he was out in the sun. I think in that very first in the prologue or the
he was dead.
Yeah, but she kept talking about him though he was still out there, and of course they were looking for him. If not looking for him,
right,
then they were trying to find the killer because there's a whole thing that we won't get into with the Grindelids and vengeance or eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth kind of thing. But
they're serious about it too.
Yeah, they're very, very serious about it. But yeah, so I kept thinking that he was alive. So yeah, in some regards, I felt well, I hope he shows up. I wanted him to show up because I felt how much Crash cared about him as a friend. And even though he is a slimy worm thing that leaves a trail of slime wherever he goes, but whatever. Pretty gross. There's a good moment in there too where she tells him to clean up all the slime and the stuff. Who was it? Crash, I think, says that to the Grindelids right after they left. You're not going to clean this mess up.
Right.
And she was the owner of the Supreme Coronet City Diplomat Protection Company.
She needs a better acronym that fits all that.
We got to get her somebody in marketing to help her with that. Do you think she's going to be in anything at this point? At the very end of this book? I mean, I don't.
I kind of hope so. So again, Easter eggs, right? So Crash's name is Alice Ongwa, and so the writer of the Dr. Aphra comic is Alyssa Wong, right? And her Twitter handle is actually @Crash Wong. So this character was very much written after, DJO did this intentionally for Alyssa Wong, which is really cool. I think that very subtle type of things, but it was very much inspired by Alyssa Wong. But so I bring that up because those types of characters seem like they linger on in some way, right? And then you come back to them, and again, it's kind of like Book of Boba Fett. So Book of Boba Fett, okay, well, he's got to pull all of these resources together and all of these, friends in order to make this final stand. And you can't help but think that the High Republic in Phase 3 is going to have to get to that point in order to truly defeat Marchion Ro. I can't even call it a Nihil anymore, but Marchion Ro. And it's going to take all of these different types of people in order to make that happen. And so I have a feeling that we might see her again. Now, will it be this specific? Maybe. I mean, Corellia is a pretty major planet, so that they would go back to Corellia for some reason is not out of the question at all. And again, I think she really made a great team with Zeen and with Reath and Ram. So I'm all for her. I thought she was a great character. She was a little over the top at first, I think. So, but I mean, I warmed up to her probably after about a third of the way through. She really became a really, really well-rounded character, I thought. And she has a rival and all these other things. And again, she has to make decisions too, and she has to grow up. She's really just a kid. She's probably about Reath's age, I think, maybe just a touch older. So she's kind of a kid too, running a business, and feeling responsible for people's lives. So, I mean, she gets it.
Yeah. Descaro was her rival.
Yeah. Yeah, just car or
that guy. Yeah, I hope they do bring her back. I just don't know in what capacity. I mean, it could be a comic, it could be a young adult novel again. But it did seem like they left it off with her still available.
yeah.
Her services, whatever those may be at this point, should these guys need them. So it would be kind of cool if they did call her back up later on, even in a phase 3 kind of thing. It doesn't have to be in this next one because, well, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be in phase 2 unless she's a lot older than we think she is.
Right.
So
not even
we'll
Lady
see.
Proxima will be in that one.
Yeah, there you go. We'll get that.
Maybe.
I'm trying to think what else was interesting about her. What sold it for me was the green, the swamp, and her relationship with her mother, and kind of going back to her mom and all that. I don't know. It was a very poignant moment there. Those couple of chapters where she was with her mom and just was able to kind of be who she really was, and the lessons that her mom was teaching her about. Look, you don't need to keep everybody away. I just meant your clients, not your team. Right? Those are the people
Right.
you want to be in the know, and you want them to trust you, and you want to be able to trust them. It was a good lesson for her to learn from her mother. So
Absolutely.
it was another great moment there. Excuse me. Okay, well, let's. I'm trying to think if there was anybody else here. I mean, we had like Spheno. We didn't really talk about her. She's kind of like I don't know, she's the Taylor Swift of the galaxy, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, seems like it.
Huge starlet, and everybody loves her. And they had an on and again, off again relationship, her and Crash. And I think at the very end, they leave it open to like, hey, maybe there's something that can exist here. So good for them. But she was just kind of in the background, although she was kind of like, at times, there was they were feuding quite a bit in this. Throughout. I don't know if that was just their emotions, right? Them having feelings for each other, and it was kind of manifesting, and these little squabbles that were kind of happening throughout the book. But I think once they got past that, it was all fine.
It reminded me a lot of Sana Staros and Dr. Aphra, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, right. Same kind of thing.
It's
that
almost
tension.
Right, almost a love-hate relationship where you've just known each other for so long. You know all the things you hate about them, but you also love all of that about them too.
Yep.
And again, I think it was Spheno, like she was able to take care of herself and didn't necessarily need Crash to feel responsible for her. But Spheno's not always allowed to, because she's got this aura about her and she has to kind of play in the shadows. And she has this weird levitating thing. But that she was able to actually prove like I can actually take care of myself. And she was very capable. I mean, without question. And I think Crash also had to accept who she was, who Spheno was, and kind of let that go so they could actually finally move forward and maybe cast away some of the robes of all of this dissonance that they've had for so long.
Yeah, there was. Let's kind of talk. Let's segue into Zeen and Lula now for just a little bit, because I do want to talk about not only them. So Zeen and Lula, who was it? Kantam and what did I say his name was now?
Atar.
Atar. Yep. Kantam and Atar. And then there was another one in here too. It was not like male and female relationship, right? There were other examples in this book, and I thought DGL did a really good job of it's mentioned, and I think this is where I don't want to get in a soapbox, but I hear a lot of people give feedback about the High Republic and like it's quote woke, and we have these relationships with two females or two males or
or non-binary
characters, right? And how much they hate this, and that you don't need this in Star Wars, and I don't need this in Star Wars. And I thought he did a really great job of putting it in Star Wars, right? But it doesn't, like, unless you're like focused on it and you have to me, it feels like unless you have like a problem with it just in general, right? You've got a bias towards it in some way. It doesn't really even like come across that. It's like two kids in love. It's two people in love. And I thought their relationship, probably more than the other ones, really resonated with me in that way. Like when he was talking about how much they loved each other and that connection that they were feeling. He never really said I don't think they ever really said love. I think they mentioned it towards the very end, right? But they were definitely speaking around the subject of, do we love each other, that kind of thing, and just how connected they were, especially when they were meditating. And, she was talking about how she could always feel where she was, and there was that big connection. I mean,
Yeah, this is Zeen and Lula, right?
right. It just kind of transpired gender in all ways for me as I was reading it. And I just thought he did a really good job of handling that. And not only is it just one example, but again, there's 3 examples in this book of that. And so he didn't just double down, he tripled down on it. And it just, I don't know. I thought he did real, again, just kudos for him for doing that. And I wish people would give this book a chance and allow themselves to just, shed the biases, just read the book for what it is and love the characters for what they love and how much they love each other. But specifically Zeen and Lula, I thought they had a really, really special relationship. So,
No, I agree with. I mean, I agree with you too. I think it's when you're coming from what we had in EU with with some of these subjects and with some of the characters and gender and relationships, it does feel. I mean, I get it. It does feel very abrupt, But we've been doing this for about a year now, And again, we're kind of ramping up some of this stuff. But again, you take the gender out of it, the relationships are real. The feelings are real. It doesn't matter. What the relationship is, or whether it's a male, female, female, non-binary male or non-binary and a male, or it just doesn't matter. What it is. The stories are good, the relationships are good, and it's indicative of our culture too. Mm-hmm. And for those things to come across and how they choose to do them in the book is, it's writer's prerogative. And again, I haven't seen anything that took away from the story that they were trying too hard to press that stuff. Or anything else. And again, it's been missing in Star Wars for a very long time. So for it to be, I won't call it front and center, but I guess much more obvious, and than it has ever been. I get it. It's uncomfortable for some people, especially folks who may not understand it at a very base level. But at the same time, these are very human relationships and very human emotions, or at least what we would equate to those things. And so I think it's more about what are you learning from all of that, and just read it and listen, and can you picture any relationship like that? And then the rest of it doesn't matter. Like what the gender is just doesn't matter at that point. And that's, I think that's the whole point of where our society is supposed to be going, right? Or where we're trying to go, is that we shouldn't look at those things and they jump out and we actually stare, right? They're just something that we accept and that it's okay. And that these people can be free to be who they are,
yep.
And not risk any kind of judgment. And again, I think that's the way these authors have written it so well, is that there is no judgment. They don't even make comments about it with other people, or the other characters. They don't even notice it. And again, I think this is more this utopian type of idea. I mean, utopian may be a bit strong, but this desired output of what we want. This is what we want our culture to look like at some point, to where we don't worry about that stuff. We just say, oh, they look really happy. And just go on from there.
Yeah, I mean it's humanistic, right? It's just being a good person at the end of the day, which
right, yeah. And I know that, for any of our folks who might really be interested in that aspect of it, I'm not trying to shortchange any of it. Of course, it's just more.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, the place we want to be, we have a long way to get there, of course. But yeah, I think that's where they're trying to strive for. It's kind of where we would prefer ourselves to be, and let's use Star Wars as an example of how that can work.
Yep. Yeah, it was that meditation. They were able to kind of feel each other's presence. They had a sense of, oh yeah, and then they had the sense of what love could mean for a Jedi. Like that was like, he touched on this and he didn't really explore it a whole lot. But then it got me thinking, like, if you're a Jedi with the Force and you were kind of like somebody like who's the empath kid? That's got the funny name for I can't think of his name now. But or like Buryaga, let's use him for an example, right? Buryaga has the ability to kind of, he's an empath. He uses the Force and he can connect with people in different ways. But can you imagine being a Jedi and like actually giving into your emotions and all that? And I know that technically can lead to the dark side, because if you don't keep them in check and the whole ownership piece and all that, or attachment piece. But there was the way he was explaining the way they connected with each other and the way they felt love through the Force felt like so powerful, so much more powerful. And I imagine this is what Anakin felt, with Padme, even though it may not have been reciprocated, or was it, in that way, and like through the Force. But I thought he did a really good job of explaining that and giving us something to think about. No wonder this is so. No wonder why the Jedi are so hesitant to allow themselves to get to that level, because it is a very powerful thing. I mean, you think about our relationships and how much we're able to kind of love one another, but manifest that with the Force and being able to sense and feel things at a much higher level and connect with somebody at that level. It's all the more easier for that downfall to happen and the harder for you to crash when things don't go well, like as we saw again with Anakin. But yeah, it was just a note that I took in there that he did a good job of explaining that. And I wish he would tap into that more. Maybe we'll get some more of that later on. But I don't remember it being explored in that way prior.
No, and I think what I liked about that, and I can't remember who Vernestra's Padawan is. That's the boy you're thinking of. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
So what I liked about it though is that they both recognize that while they do feel these things and they do feel this stuff, they also have this sense of they need to do their duty, right? To quote Anakin, right, and Obi-Wan. They have to still have a job to do, and they have to do it well, and they know they can't always do it together. And that's just a moment of where they're at. Now, at the end, Zeen basically, because Lula's amongst the missing, right, from Fallen Star. Mm-hmm. But really the other material, but she's one of the missing, at least according to Midnight Horizon. She's unaccounted for. And so this is, she's like, I'm going to go find my friends. And this is my family. Zeen's not a Jedi though, right? So she doesn't necessarily have all of these things, although she's definitely open to joining the Order, I think. I think she said as much. I'll even join their ranks if they would allow her to. But I think it's one of these where while they have that strong connection, that strong bond. I think one of the things that they've still been able to balance out is that whole letting go idea that I need to trust you to do what you're supposed to do. I hope you live. I really do hope to see you again. But I also have to understand that you're doing your job and I'm doing mine. And yeah, we should be doing all of this together. But if one of us falls or if one of us has to take a different path, then I'm going to have to, at some point, I've got to let you do that too. And that's where they're at when Zeen joins Reath and Ram. But I think she kind of comes back to that type of thought too, even though within the context of saying, well, okay, we really do need, we're better, stronger together than we are apart. And I'm not going to give up on my family.
There's with both the Zeen and Lula, it was Zeen that was wanting to leave the Order, like she was going to leave, run and hide after the mission and not look back kind of thing. I could have sworn in there also that they did mention that they wouldn't let her join the Order because she was too old.
Yeah, there was something like that. But again, she's allowed to tool around with them all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, she's one of the family.
Absolutely.
So I don't quite understand that one. And Zeen, man, from where she started in the very first High Republic adventure comic and where she is now, you talk about a character who's been through the ringer, right? So what she and Lula were chasing is Crix, like her old childhood friend that turned her back. I mean, we could go through the whole, why this is a thing, but where Lula comes from, you don't embrace the Force. It makes you you're an enemy of the state, effectively. You're not allowed to be Force sensitive. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand why they still persist, but especially the way, given how she's the way she's acted too, right? I mean, I get like once they're older, then they've got their own personal experiences, and those may, for better or for worse, could make you a good Jedi or not make you a good Jedi, and they don't want, it's easier to mold or I guess it's easier to mold a kid at a very early age.
It's much easier to manipulate and indoctrinate a child.
I was trying to stay away from manipulate, but that's essentially what they're doing.
They're definitely indoctrinating him into a way of thinking and a culture,
yes,
right?
Yes, and that becomes much more difficult as people get older, unless they've got trauma or they're looking for that in innerly or whatever.
But I think Zeen has been such a great example of both, embracing, learning who she is and embracing that aspect of herself, but also learning to keep things in check. She's flirted with giving into her anger and with Crix in particular. And she made a huge leap in between the last time in the comics we saw her and in this book right here. Mm-hmm. And even in this book, how she felt about Crix and wasn't going to allow him to use her, but, kind of play him actually in a certain way. And so I think her being able to turn her back on those types of emotions, those types of feelings, I think it was as Jedi a thing to do as any other Jedi we've seen in a lot of ways. Yeah. And so I hope they do offer her to come in as an official person in the order, because I think she just fits the mold so well. And I think she's the epitome of what a Jedi should be, of where they've come from, and how you can take someone who's young and got their own opinions and life experiences and still have them be successful. Because she's not as neurotic as Anakin is, right?
No, not at all. You mentioned Crix being captured, which happened in this book. So anybody that's not followed the High Republic Adventures comic, he was a main character. He was kind of like the complete opposite of her. I guess they had pitched them together in that that kind of infamous panel now, that last page where they're both light and dark side kind of thing. And it was somebody that Markian Rowe had kind of taken in under his wing there for a while, and was kind of grooming him. I hate to use that term, but it's kind of creepy in the way he was treating him. And to what end, I don't really know, other than just being a pawn, I guess, in all of this, right? Having somebody they could manipulate to kind of run this mission here, or run several other missions. But they do eventually capture him, and they were taking him to Starlight Beacon. And I don't remember what happened though. I'm assuming he died, because they had captured him, and then they were heading out to Starlight Beacon. They were going to leave him there, and then Zeen was going to meet up with them later on. So presumably, I guess he's dead now.
Crix?
Crix, yeah. I mean, if he was on Starlight Beacon,
oh yeah,
he would have went down with the ship. So
yeah,
I don't know, fitting into that character.
He's a punk. I mean, he's a straight up punk. So good riddance.
Good riddance. And that's
I'm not a Jedi. I can hate him.
Yeah, that's kind of what Zeen was saying too. Is like, I'm over this. Like, you did this to yourself. I don't take any responsibility for your actions.
Exactly. I mean, it's so exactly what a Jedi should be doing, right?
Right.
And she learned. I think that's also where she learned that from Lula Talissa. So I mean, it's just, or Tala Solo, I guess.
And she had been carrying that. She had been carrying that guilt throughout the comic of like, hey, he was my friend. I did this. He feels betrayed. I have some responsibility here,
But she was so angry about it too at times, right?
Yeah.
That he continues to hurt people, and that she should be able to do more, and she shouldn't. He keeps taking advantage of her, and so just that she was able to get to that point, I think, is a testament to her character, but also the people around her.
Yep.
The Padawans in particular, I think.
Excuse me. Okay. Let's with the time we got left, let's talk about. Why don't we start with Cohmac Vitus? And kind of, I know we've talked a lot about him already, but I thought his character in particular was one that kind of rose for me in how much I liked him. I know a lot of people liked him from the previous books, and I don't disagree that he wasn't a good character. But this was the first book for me personally that I felt like, oh, he's awesome. Like, I really enjoyed him more than I had in the other books. And I don't know if it was just because, I think it was just really his approach to, like, he was the voice of reason for me. Like, enough's enough. Like, this is stupid. Why are we doing all this? You know what I mean?
Right.
Where's the quote? I have the quote in here. He says, Cohmac waved a hand, stopping them. I know what I've said in the past. His voice became broken, gravely whisper. But these past months, and especially everything that's happening right now, it's changed me, Kantam. The galaxy is not, it's not what we grew up in. It's not the one, the order we knew was built for. I don't know where we go from here, but I don't, but I know if we don't face the new reality head on, it will devour us whole. He took a shaking deep breath. We don't have a choice. Now or never. Flinching means losing everything. And that was that moment where he was like, this is it. We're done. Like, if you're going to follow me, we're going to do all this. We're going to go about it a different way. It was a big turning point for him, but it was a big turning point for me, and just kind of really having a Jedi character that had enough, was more pragmatic in their approach, right? And knew that was the only, and had they gone into this battle without that mindset, they would have been wiped out.
Yeah.
Right. It was one of the many things that really, and there's a series of things that just happened in their favor. But this mentality and getting Kantam Sy to buy in on it, and Reath and Ram also buying in, which you could say is just kind of natural instinct and survivability, but it's not. Not with the Jedi. They try to preserve life first. But yeah, had they not gone in with this mindset, things would have been very, very different as those waves and waves of Nihil continue to attack them.
The difference of Cohmac from Into the Dark to this book was such a great transition. Really, maybe it's really kind of a stark contrast. If we remember, so Into the Dark, he's very headstrong. He kind of knows everything. He doesn't really take a lot of advice necessarily. Him and Orla bump heads every once in a while. There's clearly something there, and so we get a very different overconfidence in him that, of course, ends up biting him in the end. And again, it was reminiscent of what they had done in the past. Fast forward to this one, I liked that he was very much interested in Kantam's story. Now, again, we know it's because he was considering leaving the Order at this point, but that he listened and asked questions and wanted to learn from someone else's experiences, I think was the Cohmac that we originally thought was the Cohmac that we were told that this character was. Very much a student, right? And very much a learning of the lessons of the past and of artifacts and languages and all these other things, right?
Yeah.
That was his thing. That was
he
what
was
he
the
was
prototype
known
for Reath Silas in a way.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I mean, and even with fighting abilities, because Reath's always been strong fighting, right? And Cohmac as well. And so I think it was to have him in this very vulnerable position where he's trying to, again, learn to assess how he wants to approach this new world, this new, what's the word for the Jedi? It's almost like just a new, not a mantra, but just a new approach to doing things. And it's just a stark shift and difference from what they've ever been, at least in their lifetimes.
Yeah.
And so I really like that we finally got that aspect of Cohmac coming back to the surface, even if he ran off in a very funny fashion at the very end of this book, which I was like, what?
He ran off.
He did, literally.
People in Star Wars are run off screen.
I know, but I can see you. Just run faster.
So this new way of thinking too, it did bring shades of, like, again, I hate to say this because we talked about it a lot during the Fallen Star, but just, after 9/11,
yeah,
our way of thinking was very different. Our senses were heightened. We were on high alert. We were we were more proactive in how we were handling terrorism. Right? If you see something, say something. If there's a bag, right? All the measurements and precautions that we took to be more proactive, that all changed after 9/11, and still a lot of that is just kind of common life today, right? Everyday life.
It was really uncomfortable for a while.
I mean, it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was a different way of thinking. The general fear, right? The rational part of your brain says, okay, well, I know something can't happen every single day, or likely won't happen, at least in the U.S., right? But yeah, but again, things are changing. You can feel it. Something has completely shifted. We have gone to a completely different place, and we know we're not equipped to handle it. And yeah, we're struggling to figure out on the fly. So it was very much like the job. I mean, there's so many correlations with, with those tragic events and just how long it took for us to adjust to what a new world should look like. And a lot of things we tried didn't work all that well, but some things, like you said, still persist to this day.
Yeah. Well, and the way I'd summarize it is, I think a lot of people just finally came to terms with, these guys just want to kill us. You know what I mean? Like, they're not trying to, win over our country or whatever else. I mean, they're literally just trying to kill us any chance they get. And I think that's exactly what he's saying here is like, look, we've been sitting here trying to preserve life and make excuses for why they do the things, or try to get in the heads of why they do the things they do, but they don't care. They're out to just kill us. And that's been quote, the folly that we've been living under or living with for the last year. And so we need to take the fight to them. And that's what they do, quite literally in this one. They take the fight to them, but he's had enough, which, again, I really enjoyed that aspect of him, of finally kind of putting his foot down. You mentioned his relationship.
But it was still very different than like Avar Kriss, though, right?
Yeah.
Of what we saw with Avar kind of stepping in line. You can defend Light and Life with certain tactics and plans and even a push, but you can't go out on the all-out aggression looking for blood type of thing.
Right.
Even if you get into severe bloodshed and war gets nasty. I mean, that's just the reality of it. War is nasty. Mm-hmm. It's not fun. It's gross. It's ugly. It's just not good.
The other, you mentioned with Orla Jareni in that relationship and that conversation that he had was very, very powerful, I thought, where he was telling her that, that he can't see clearly anymore. with what's going on. And he said, I don't know if that's me or something beyond, something that's coming. And then he mentioned that Orla had been helping him meditate with it and to kind of come to terms with everything that he was struggling with. But the fact that he was opening up to her, I thought was good to see that they still had that relationship. When Orla goes down and dies, he knows that she's dead, and that's why I wonder, like, with
but
Torben
he wouldn't let himself kind of admit to it quite yet.
Yeah, but like with Torben Buck, I know we've been talking about whether or not he lived or died. I gotta think that Kantam Sy would have felt that, given how close they were, and they didn't mention that in this book. And I thought if anybody older would have probably put that in there, because he did with Orla Jareni, so why wouldn't he do that with Torben?
He was listed as one of the missing in action or unaccounted for.
Yeah,
along with Farzala. Yeah.
What was it they used over and over again there at the very end? It wasn't whatever it takes. Oh, that line was said in this book, by the way, whatever it takes. I don't know if that's going to be the mantra going into phase 3.
But you brought up Orla, though. And again, I think the thing with Orla is that I was just more hurt again of what happened in Fallen Star. Because I'm like, damn it, we're not going to get any more of Orla Jareni.
Nope.
I mean, sorry, I almost said words we're not supposed to say, but it's so frustrating because Stellan's gone, Orla is gone, Cohmac ran off into the night, but clearly there was those 3 characters. Orla is that central point between them of all of this drama and stuff. And we get a really clear idea that, and Elzar too, right? Elzar was so dependent on Orla being kind of his guiding light when Stellan's kind of out of touch and so on and so forth. But, it really did feel like Cohmac was, I think I need to pursue something with Orla. He wanted to go back to her on some level and go back. I don't think Orla is that kind of Jedi, but now it just doesn't matter. And I'm pissed about it. Bring back Orla Jareni.
Yeah. Yeah, she was kind of like
business.
She was like the Jedi psychic or psychiatrist.
Yeah, she was the guidance counselor for everyone.
Yeah, EAP program.
That's employee assistance program for people who don't know.
Yeah, for the non-corporate world types. But yeah, everybody confided in her. But yeah, you're right. Like, she became another character that just can continue to get more and more interesting, and she's gone.
Oh, man, so much. Yeah.
I don't know, how old is she? Do you think we'll see her? I don't remember how old.
I don't think she's 150 plus years old.
Maybe we'll get her infant story. Who knows? Oh yeah. Okay. So, but yeah, Cohmac, he was great throughout the book, and especially at the very end there with him, struggling to kind of keep on with the order. I am curious.
What do you think he's going to do, though?
I was about to go there. I don't know what his plan is. Right with Kantam Sy. Kantam at least there was something there that he was pursuing, or they were pursuing. Sorry, there was something there that they were pursuing, right?
Right.
And we don't get a sense that there's anything that Cohmac Vitus is pursuing or is going to pursue, unless something just completely escapes me and I'm not seeing it. So I don't know.
It's like almost like Elzar, right? He knows he needs to get away, but he at least had a kind of a partner to do that with. And I think Cohmac probably would have leaned on Orla quite a bit.
Exactly.
Still alive. And man, I've left the order entirely, at least in the way they did. But I don't know, man. I really have no idea. He's going to be in like a Obi-Wan, like in some, he's going to be working in a meat factory or something to try to get back in touch with who he is or whatever that might be. But I think Cohmac's a character. Sorry, I have terrible analogies. I think with Cohmac, though, I think this is a character that can come back, and I think is likely to come back. I think we have to come back to him, to be honest with you.
Right.
Because you just can't leave that hanging Chad, right? You've got to resolve that and see what it is he went and what he learned and what he was looking for, I think, which is, I think, the difficult part to understand is, yeah, he doesn't like all of this where we're at in life, but what is he going to do something about it? Is he just going to go and self-reflect or what? And we're given zero indication unless it just totally went over my head.
He's going to go join the circus. Just like Kantam Sy did.
Right, that's what he took of it. Well, and actually, so it's an interesting. So Kantam Sy actually tells him, "I didn't mean for you to take that literally."
Yeah, right. It was just a story, man. That's
right.
all.
Yeah. But that's where Cohmac's like, it's not a walkabout. Like, I'm really done. I just can't do this. It's not who I am anymore. And so he's relinquishing his post, but pretty severe.
Yeah. Kantam Sy is just one of the coolest characters now in a lot of different ways. Just knowing that they left the Order for as long as they did. I think they were gone for about a year in total, is what I remember reading. Right. They joined the circus. They also had other odd jobs. They were a mechanic, smuggler, a waiter, a bodyguard. They've lived
whatever it takes to get by.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
People in the circus sometimes have side jobs because it doesn't pay well.
Doesn't pay well.
Yeah, you're there for the community and the experience.
But that's great because it's those kind of people that really have the more well-rounded kind of lives, right? They've seen so many different things, and they've been humbled, and they've lived, charmed lives as well. And so that kind of really starts to kind of steer you, kind of round out your personality in a lot of different ways. And I think we see that with Kantam Sy probably more than many of the other Jedi. They just seem very, very well grounded in a lot of different ways. And now more than ever, like if there's any one Jedi that seems to get it and knows what they want, it's them, right? Because they left, and that was part of Yoda's plan, was like letting them go, having them come back. And if they came back, that was because that's what they really wanted. And the kind of segue into really what I thought was really a great moment or a great story was we got the backstory on Lula and how she came about. And I guess the way we would summarize it is at one point, Kantam is, he's no longer in the circus. I forget what he was doing at the time. He was a messenger, I think, wasn't he, or something like that? Delivering mail.
Something like that.
Something like they were delivering mail. And there was a moment there where these two kids are suddenly picked up by this bird, Kolvor or whatever it was, and taken to the top of a mountain. And so he, becomes the hero, jumps in the water, climbs all the way up to the mountain. Climbs up all the way up to the top of the mountain. And right as the Kolvor, I think, dropped the kids, he reaches out with the Force and saves the little girl. And as the little girl, he's thinking, okay, well, the boy is gone. They're not going to make it because they're going to fall into the water. They realize that the little girl is actually using the Force too, and she was saving her brother, and so both of them were saved. And that was the big changing point. That's for them. That was the big changing point. That was a point where they knew they needed to go back to the Force, because I don't know. Did you see it? Was it a sign? Did they see it as a sign that suddenly there's this little youngling here that, I saved, and,
Well, again, she saw inspiration from them, right? And I think that's the part that they finally realize, is that there's so much I could be doing, and there's so much I could be giving. And again, this is that place as a teacher. And I think Kantam Sy is a fantastic teacher from what we've seen so far. And again, I think how they've talked with Cohmac, and so I think it's I think they just finally came to that realization that, you know what, this has been great. I really love this relationship, but this is who I am, and I'm finally figuring out I'm ready to embrace who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get all these experiences, but I had to have all of that in order to get to this point to where I really can know who I truly am, and the effect that they had on the kid, that inspired them to do something and to be able to help and channel that Force. He just knew that was what they had to. Sorry, I keep saying he. I apologize, but they they know they need to go back and pursue that life again with the Jedi, and go back to Yoda, and the rest of the Order.
Yeah, it was a Hapabor that was birthing their pups. There you go.
Nothing like a Hapabor.
If you want to go read more about the birthing of Hapabors, which is that big thing that was drinking water in The Force Awakens.
That with Finn.
With Finn, yeah. That Finn goes over and drinks the water. That big, I don't know what it is.
Looked like a hippopotamus of sorts.
Yeah, big hippopotamus. So you get to know all about the birthing of that in this book too. So just added bonus there. And then we also in this, I don't remember if it's in this book or not, but just to make mention that Kantam Sy was, again, Yoda's Padawan So,
Yeah.
and now they're reunited. So,
And again, that the relationship that they had with Yoda was, and then again, Yoda's perspective was just so great of how he felt that loss.
mhm.
And knowing that, I feel like he really wanted to tell them that, this is, no, your place really is here, but he can't do that. He has to let them go too, and not allow that attachment to skew his thinking and into where he influences somebody else to make a choice that they don't want to make, or that they're not ready to make. So it was very much a learning experience for Yoda too. I think it's always great when you see the masters like Yoda learn something else, and it was cool that a character like Kantam Sy was able to give him that opportunity.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about the end. And when I call the end, I'm calling chapter 65 and beyond for me.
Yeah.
That's when Yoda finally showed up. And just that passage reads, "There they were, joined by a strange figure swathed in robes and bandages who had oh, no, that's not the right one. Darn it, I read the wrong one. I was trying to find it. I don't think I have it here. Oh, here it is. A little off to the side, that strange hooded figure sat, singing his own. No, that's not the right one either. All right, well, I don't have it. But there is a moment when he shows up, and to kind of make things, kind of summarize, they're in the midst of all of the waves and waves of Nihil coming. They don't seem to be stopping. There's a ship that suddenly takes off, and it is a bunch of Nihil on it. And this is like the third ship now that had taken off. Ram had already stopped the first two, but he was no longer around. This third ship took off, and they all the Jedi that were there reached out with the Force while defending themselves, still trying to hold the ship in place. And then they talk about how that weight was just suddenly lifted, and at that same time, the fog had completely cleared, like a wind had come in off the shore, whatever.
Yeah, the fog of war that the Nihil were using, right?
Had lifted, yeah.
And there stood a little guy in robes and a green lightsaber with his hand pointing to the sky. And then Yoda made a joke.
He makes a joke, right?
Something about
the hand you need, yeah. But then he takes that ship and hurls it with the Force at all of the Nihil that were still
just
coming.
Obliterates them right through the middle.
Blows them up. So he didn't care. He killed a lot of people. Yeah, he did some pretty cool stuff. And then I thought he did a pretty good job describing Yoda in battle. It was very similar to what we saw, with him fighting in
Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones and the prequel trilogy and Clone Wars. But him just kind of jumping around and literally limbs flying in this whirlwind of what he called it, green kinetic energy is what he called it.
Right, that's a great way of putting it.
A great way to kind of describe him. But yeah, he literally saves the day, and it kind of turns the tide. And then I was hoping he would have that moment where he, kind of the general, if you will, that moment where he pulled them all together. And he did. He told everybody to regroup. What was it he used? He used a way to signal that, to tell him to kind of, he said it out loud of everybody, come in on me, and then we'll kind of make our way to the forces or whatever.
Yeah, he wanted to do a final push, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what he said though.
But it was pretty inspirational seeing him. And again, this is a character that for as much grief as I gave about, do I really want to see Yoda, in this and all that? It made
this so much cooler, right?
It did make it so much cooler. Yep, I will admit that. I was not Yoda could have not been in this whole thing going into it. This whole thing is in the High Republic, and I would have been just fine. Yeah. But I like the way they used them. Now that said, I think they have a lot of explaining to do.
Lucy?
Right? Yeah, there's a lot of explaining to do. And he kind of mentions that there at the very end. That
he's learned a lot, and they've got to go dig into the past. So the question I wanted to ask you about Yoda, though, because you have been very vocal about, WTH's Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you feel about him showing up in a young adult novel rather than... Now, granted, we've seen him in High Republic Adventures, which again are geared towards younger readers.
Yeah.
But but again, there's been a long time since he's been there too. Do you have a problem with him showing up in the young adult, but not in the adult book? Do you think that's a problem, or is that okay, or is that great, or is that, it didn't matter? Or how did you feel about that? Especially if you read it from the adult novel, you only read the adult novels, would you feel kind of,
yeah. I mean, if all I did is focus on the adult novels, I think I'd be a little upset. I will say the saving grace in all this is that Yes, well, he's in there. He comes in chapter 65. There's only like 69 chapters,
Yeah,
or
there's
something
not
like
much
that.
of him.
So he's not really in this book a lot.
He's referenced quite a bit, though.
He's referenced in all of Star Wars, like all of these books and comics.
Right.
He's constantly being referenced.
This one was a pretty good concentration of him. But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So what I guess where I was going is if all I did is focus on the adult novels, then if someone just gave me what we did here and gave you the blurb of like here's what he did, you're fine. You probably have enough to go off of.
Yeah.
So from that regard, I don't think it's a misstep in any way. I would have liked to have seen him be in the adult novels though. Maybe there's still an opportunity. Maybe he's going to be, kind of a prominent player in phase 2. If not, phase 3, I think is going to be all about Yoda. Like, and I'd say all about Yoda, but he's going to be.
Oh, he's back.
Got all the, he's back, and he's got all the knowledge. He's got all the secrets. He's got this mysteriously robed character who just doesn't do anything but sing that wicked nursery rhyme the entire time. Like, what kind of sick creature is this?
Right. And they didn't really talk about much about the creature's appearance or anything else, just that they were in robes and yeah. But no, it's to kind of go back to that. I think.
Hey, let me read that quote because I've got it right here.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, this is the quote I was still reading because I thought it was Yoda, but it says they were there. They were joined by a strange figure swathed in robes and bandages, who had accompanied Master Yoda. Much to explain there is, Yoda had muttered, without explaining anything. Nobody bothered trying to get more answers just then. There would be time for that later. And then the only other part that he's mentioned in is a little bit later when they're back at the green and they're kind of in the swamp. It says a little off to the side, that strange hooded figure sat, singing as always. They'd come with Master Yoda. Zeen had realized once everyone had disembarked and settled in at Bai News, that's her mom, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
The figure never showed their face, never spoke to anyone, just sang a sad little ditty over and over in a raspy whisper. And then he goes on to sing, they'll do what they can, they'll do what they must, but when they do find you, all you'll be is dust. Like,
do you think it's the nurse? Do you think it's the nursemaid?
Maybe.
I know they said that she was dead, that Stellan Geo said she was dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only other person that we know sings that song outside of like Stellan and, Emmerich, but.
That would be a bit anticlimactic for it to be her.
Yeah, it would be really anticlimactic.
Really disturbing because she's scary as hell. But
yeah.
But I mean, again, it has to be something interesting. So I'm guessing it's going to be this character that we're going to go find in phase 2. And
I think they're going to be in phase 2. I'm with you there.
Yeah. But to kind of go back to the other thing about Yoda, I liked that he made this appearance here because it wouldn't have made any sense for him to really show up on Fallen Star, because if he's on Fallen Star or on Starlight Beacon in that book, then is it a turning point? Are they able to recover or something else? Or maybe he's threatened to be killed. I don't know, but I think it really made a lot of sense in this one, especially the dire circumstances we're in, that he would know where he's needed most, before going back to the temple, rather than just going, hey, I'm going to chill back in Coruscant and see you guys there.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, these guys get slaughtered. But I mean, Yoda's always been, Yoda's not always been like that, but he seems to know where he needs to be and how to get the most out of the folks around him, just like he did in Clone Wars with the clone troopers, right? When they were, on the run from the droids.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'll continue to bang this drum, but things would have been very different if either Avar had been more involved in, not chasing down Lorna D, and Yoda had been around.
Yeah.
I still have questions though, like, and they don't need to be resolved, but I still have questions about like some of these other Jedi that are masters, grandmasters that sit on the council. They got to be as powerful as Yoda. So what were they doing? Like
I know, what are they doing at all?
They've seen.
And why wouldn't Yoda tell them? That's the part I don't understand. Like, why does Yoda just peace? I'm gonna go take care of this thing.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
The veil of secrecy and the risk that he was willing to take with their lives. Like, I wonder if anybody's going to be like, hey, dude, where were you? Like, we really needed you, and you somehow felt this was more important, and you took that risk, and the least could have told us. I hope they entertain all that. I'm not saying it has to be,
I hope there's some sort of discord.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think there are legitimate questions that need to be asked.
Yeah.
Of Yoda.
And I think definitely, I think some masters should not like it at all, and should probably question him a bit, and maybe have some of that discord and that and that conflict within the order or within the council. I think that would be I think that's necessary. I think that's needed a little bit more so than what we've had for a while now. We had a little bit with Stellan and Avar, but that was really kind of just on the, on the bubble there.
I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
Did you call the code red?
What? Oh, you're so cool.
Did you order the code red? Yeah. Did you order the code? Yeah, right on it. Okay, that's enough. All right, the last part. T-Tac joins Ram and the rest of the bomb bracks.
Yep.
We didn't talk about T-Tac.
No, we didn't.
But there's now another bomb brack in the family of bomb bracks for Ram, which is good. Okay, the last thing is literally I think how the book ends, and it kind of alludes to what's going to happen in phase 2. But Yoda says, much to discuss there is, difficult the way forward will be. No duh. But there is a way.
You would have known that, Yoda, if you would have been around.
Yeah, exactly. But there is a way. There is always a way, and young Reath has learned, make that way ourselves we must, for it has not been made yet. Here's the big clue. To do this, though, to forge our path to the future, phase 3, guided by the secrets of the past, we will be, phase 2. So again, we've been talking about this. There's something in the past that they've got to be guided by, the secrets of the past, right? So something that's been kept secret, which we know there have been a lot of secrets being kept. Everything from what was it that was removed from the records? Was it Dalna or Dalna?
Yeah, there's a missing part of Dalna's history here.
History in there. Obviously these dang nameless were out there around at some point, and no one said a dang thing. Right. So why is that? But yeah, there's definitely going to be something that's going to happen in the past. And I had some whack theories about speaking to people in the future. I don't think it needs to go there. I think it could be as simple as, hey, we need to figure out, there's a mystery to be solved here, and what had happened and why there was a cover up. And I don't think Yoda knew about it, which I think is very interesting if you think about that, given 150 years really isn't much in his life still. He's probably in his prime, I would say.
He'll be about, I guess he would be about 600 in phase 2 instead of 900 in the original trilogy.
Was it 900 or 800 years?
I think it was
800.
When 900 old you be. You look as good, will you not? Mm-hmm.
Okay, whatever. But it was pretty good. But so yeah, I would say 550 to 600 years old. But still, like I would think he's in his prime. Like that's like a sprouting 30-year-old, right?
Right.
So maybe he's not in the know and he's not on the council, but I would think he is.
But again, how does he? Yeah, but again, how does he make that connection with what? Again, he saw this in the High Republic Adventures.
Right. He saw the wand or the
he saw the purple glowy thing, right?
Yeah.
The gem, yeah. So what did he take from that moment that spurred a thought in his head about something that he knew in the past? So I think we're going to get more Yoda in the past, and I mean we've kind of speculated that anyway, but yeah, I think Yoda's involvement, at least on the periphery, is going to be there, and it just seems more and more relevant that Yoda's about to be much more front and center in the High Republic.
So it is going to be about Yoda.
It's always about Yoda. Yoda.
All right. Well, yeah, that's kind of how it ends.
Yep.
But man, it was a good book.
This was, again, I think this is the most fun book, start to finish, without a question. Most enjoyable, I think. Right up there, I think, with Rising Storm for me is my favorite book in the High Republic era so far.
Yeah, I would put this at number 2, easily. I know it's saying a lot because, and it's unfortunate too, because I just feel like there are a lot of characters in here that people are just not familiar with at all. Right?
Yeah, they're going to be like, who?
Right. And why?
Well, at least we got a little bit of exposure to them. But yeah, you really have to, we haven't had a lot of time with them.
Mm-mm. I mean, not unless you've read the comics or the other young adult novels.
For the younger Jedi in particular, yeah. For Kantam Sy and Cohmac. Yeah, Kantam Sy, I guess Kantam Sy's been in the comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cohmac hasn't really been, though.
Nope. He's only been in the books.
Right.
And the young adult novels.
Right.
So, but yeah, either way, I mean, it's it is unfortunate. I don't think people are going to read these books and know the characters the way we do, or appreciate them the way that we do, or those that read the books, read these particular books. But hey, that's what we're here for, right? So, you're welcome.
Hey, there were a couple other, since we're kind of wrapping up, there were a couple other Easter eggs in this book that I can stumble across that I thought were kind of funny. Or not funny, but they're kind of nice, fun connectors. The city fathers for Corellia and Coronet. One of them is a Tag. The father of chemicals is Tag, so probably related to General Tag back in the Empire days. And then another one was Reath uses when he's making a thing, he uses Leppy ear quotes. And we would call those air quotes, right? But Leppy ear quotes. So for those that don't know, a Leppy is like a bunny. And who's our favorite bunny from Star Wars?
Jackson.
Yeah. So again, it was a bit of a play on Jackson there. So I thought that was just funny.
I didn't get that. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. It's weird, the little things that stick in my head sometimes.
Yeah, there's a greetings, excellent pig. That's another quote in here. There was while we're wrapping up, just funny moments. That moment where Tammo was one of the bodyguards, and he was told he had to kill Spheno, right? They didn't tell him that he wasn't going to, and so they ended up drugging him and all kinds of other stuff, and he never got to do it. But then they finally were like, "Hey, no, Tammo, stop!" And what was he? He was He was one of those huge hulking creatures. I forget the race that he was. It's not a Durotar though. It's not a Durotar. It's someone else. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But
Durotar? That's from Warcraft. You
mean
a Doatan?
Doatan.
Yeah, Durotar is an orc.
Is an orc, or it's in a place in World of Warcraft. But
yeah,
Durotan. Yeah, Durotan. Whatever.
Yeah, but
okay.
but Doatan though. Yeah,
Doatan. It's not that.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get this joke out. So Tammo, it's not gonna go well now because we've taken too long. But Tammo, they tell him like, "Oh no, you don't worry, you didn't have to kill her. It was all kind of a ruse." And he's like, "Oh, that made him feel better because he actually he was a big fan of her music." So,
right. Yeah.
There you go. And then I mentioned Ram changing in public. It said he found a comfortable enough perch on one of the wheel turrets, changed back into his Jedi tunic, and managed to stay still and out of sight there for what felt like a horrific slow motion tour of downtown Coronet City. So he's sitting there getting dressed on there. And wait, here's another one too. When he's walking behind the Wookiee, what was the Wookiee's name? One of Crash's crew.
I can't remember.
I forget her name, but he was walking behind her, and he said he had to constantly suppress the urge to hug her, except he only came up to her waist. And since she was walking ahead of him, it would basically mean he was getting a mouthful of Wookiee butt hair. So again, there's just great moments like that. Like I never thought about that, but I did think about that once. Like, how do Wookiees wipe? Okay. Do you have anything else before we get out of here? After
that, no.
Oh man. Oh, I have another page of notes. No, I'm kidding.
No, you're not.
I'm not. I do have some other things, but we're not getting into those. Okay. Were you keeping score of who came in and all that on the chat?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, So quick shout outs, of course, for everyone here. Jonathan, Twan, Stephanie, Lauren, Master Mike, appreciate it. Risk, of course. We had Alex in there. Hard countered. Sam popped in for a moment while he could. So thanks, Sam, for popping in. And I think that was everybody that decided to chat. We got a few likes and stuff over on the thing. Usually you do these parts. Richard Williams, we talked about last year. And then Janora. I'm assuming that's one of your crew.
Yeah, she is. Thanks for everybody for chiming in and tuning in, and especially for this coverage of Midnight Horizon.
And if you're listening, we do a live stream. You get to see Albert sweat when he's not feeling too great, but power through a 2-hour show.
Wet the entire time.
You are dripping, man. But yeah, we do a live stream. Now we're kind of doing them on Tuesdays and Thursdays to avoid some scheduling conflicts that we've had. So general shows on Tuesday and some live shows for Patreon on Thursday. That's open for everyone. But yeah, we would love to have you on the live stream, YouTube, Facebooks, all the places. If you'd like to come talk to us on Discord, eargluemedia.com/Discord. If you would like to email us, We have a new email address.
What? Get out of here.
Our email address has changed. So it is now hello there at cantinacast.com. So we have finally...
Are you serious?
I've that's what I named our contact is hello there at cantinacast.com in honor of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So if you'd like to shoot us a note or something, hello there at cantinacast.com. Or Albert, we have a phone number too. People can leave us a voicemail.
Yes, that phone number is 803-717-CAST. That's 803-717-2278.
Operators are standing by. So anyway, we'd love for you guys to come out and join us. eargluemedia.com. Lots of great shows going on there. I know Film Appraisers just did they did a Batman. They're doing an MCU preview. So huge shout out to them. They're knocking it out of the park. So just highlight one of our shows out there. So please go give them a look, eargluemedia.com and eargluemedia.com/Discord. We've been having a lot of fun over in Discord.
All right. And that's going to do it for us. We'll be back on Thursday to talk about, I don't even know. What are we talking about?
Oh, I think we're doing more Fallen Star.
I think so too.
This is the vessel.
This is the vessel.
Yeah,
okay.
The crew of the vessel. So
4-7, the vessel.
Yeah. Matthew McConaughey, Avi Hollow. Whatever his name is.
Geode.
Lex Jassy and Geode.
So we're talking about them and their role in the Fallen Star, and probably be a quick episode. Honestly, I don't think it's going to be, I say that.
Yeah, we always say that.
We
This
said
is like
this
20 minutes tops. Yeah, hour and a half later.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get that scheduled out there for everyone on Wednesday. So you'll start hitting that in your social media feeds. Again, just look it up. So the Cantina Cast is pretty much everywhere. But again, our email address is just cantinacast.com. So
no more Gmail stuff.
No more Gmail stuff.
Okay. And with that, we'll see you guys in a couple days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.